A reading from The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. The original text featured is copyright C.S. Lewis Pte. Limited, first published in 1950, and Narnia is a registered trademark. In the dead of night, Susan and Lucy look on in horror as Aslan the lion offers himself as a sacrifice to pay the blood price of their brother Edmund's treachery. They see the White Witch and her crew of monstrous creatures bind Aslan to the stone table before the witch kills him with a single blow. Part 4. Deeper Magic from Before the Dawn of Time. While the two girls still crouched in the bushes with their hands over their faces, they heard the witch calling out, "Now, follow me all of you, and we will set about what remains of this war. It will not take us long to crush the human vermin and the traitors, now the great fool, the great cat, lies dead." At that moment the children were in very great danger, for with wild cries and a noise of skirling pipes and shrill horns blowing, the whole of the vile rabble came sweeping off the hilltop and down the slope right past their hiding place. They felt the spectres go past them like a cold wind. At any other time they would have trembled with fear, but now the sadness and shame and horror of Aslan's death so filled their minds that they hardly thought of it. As soon as the wood was silent again, Susan and Lucy crept out onto the open hilltop. The moon was getting low, and thin clouds were passing across her, but still they could see the shape of the lion lying dead in his bonds, and down they both knelt in the wet grass and kissed his cold face and stroked what was left of his beautiful fur and cried till they could cry no more, and then were silent. At last Lucy said, "I can't bear to look at that horrible muzzle. I wonder, could we take it off?" So they tried, and after a lot of working at it, for their fingers were cold and it was now the darkest part of the night, they succeeded, and when they saw his face they kissed it and fondled it and wiped away the blood and the foam as best they could. "I wonder, could we untie him as well?" said Susan, but the enemies, out of pure spitefulness, had drawn the cords so tight that the girls could make nothing of the knots. Several hours passed. The two girls hardly noticed that they were getting colder, but at last Lucy noticed two other things. One was that the sky on the east side of the hill was a little less dark than it had been an hour ago. The other was some tiny movement going on in the grass at her feet. She saw that whatever it was had begun to move up the upright stones of the stone table, and now, whatever they were moving about on Aslan's body. She peered closer. They were little grey things. "Oh!" said Susan. "How beastly! They are horrid little mice crawling all over him. Go away, you little beasts!" "Wait," said Lucy, who had been looking at them more closely still. "Can you see what they're doing?" Both girls bent down and stared. "I do believe," said Susan. "But how strange! They're nibbling away at the cords." "That's what I thought," said Lucy. "I think they're friendly mice. Poor little things, they don't realize he's dead. They think it'll do some good untying him." It was quite definitely lighter by now. Both girls noticed they could see each other's faces. They could see the mice nibbling away, and at last, one by one, the ropes were all gnawed through. The sky in the east was whitish by now, and the stars were getting fainter, all except the very big one low down on the eastern horizon. They felt colder than they had been all night. The mice crept away. The girls cleared away the remains of the gnawed ropes. In the wood behind them, a bird gave a chuckling sound which startled them. Then another bird answered it. Soon there were birds singing all over the place. It was quite definitely early morning now. "I'm so cold," said Lucy. "So am I," said Susan. "Let's walk about a bit." They walked to the eastern edge of the hill and looked down. The country all looked dark grey, but beyond, at the very end of the world, the sea showed pale. The sky began to turn red. They walked to and fro more times than they could count, trying to keep warm, and oh, how tired their legs felt. Then, at last, as they stood for a moment looking out towards the sea, the red turned to gold along the line where the sea and sky met, and very slowly up came the edge of the sun. At that moment they heard from behind them a loud noise, a great cracking, deafening noise, as if a giant had broken a giant's plate. "What's that?" said Lucy, clutching Susan's arm. I feel afraid to turn around," said Susan. "Something awful is happening." "They're doing something worse to him," said Lucy. "Come on." And she turned, pulling Susan round with her. The rising of the sun had made everything look so different that for a moment they didn't see the important thing. Then they did. The stone table was broken into two pieces by a great crack that ran down it from end to end, and there was no sign of Aslan. "Oh, oh, oh!" cried the two girls, rushing back to the table. "Oh, it's too bad," sobbed Lucy. "They might have left the body alone." "Who's done it?" cried Susan. "What does it mean? Is it magic?" "Yes," said a great voice behind their backs. "It is more magic." They looked round. There, shining in the sunrise, larger than they had seen him before, shaking his mane, for it had apparently grown again, stood Aslan himself. "Oh, Aslan!" cried both the children, staring up at him, almost as frightened as they were glad. "Aren't you dead then, dear Aslan?" asked Lucy. "Not now," said. "You're not asked Susan in a shaky voice. She couldn't bring herself to say the word ghost. Aslan stooped his golden head and licked her forehead. The warmth of his breath and a rich sort of smell that seemed to hang about his hair came all over her. "Do I look it?" he said. "Oh, you're real! You're real! Oh, Aslan!" cried Lucy, and both girls flung themselves upon him and covered him with kisses. "But what does it all mean?" asked Susan, when they were somewhat calmer. "It means," said Aslan, "that though the witch knew the deep magic, there is a magic deeper still which she did not know. Her knowledge goes back only to the dawn of time, but if she could have looked a little further back, into the stillness and the darkness before time dawned, she would have read there a different incantation. She would have known that when a willing victim who had committed no treachery was killed in a traitor's stead, the table would crack, and death itself would start working backwards. And now—" "Oh, yes, now," said Lucy, jumping up and clapping her hands. "Oh, children," said the lion, "I feel my strength coming back to me. Oh, children, catch me if you can." He stood for a second, his eyes very bright, his limbs quivering, lashing himself with his tail. Then he made a leap high over their heads and landed on the other side of the table. Laughing, though she didn't know why, Lucy scrambled over to reach him. Aslan leapt again. A mad chase began. Round and round the hilltop he led them. It was such a romp as no one has ever had except in Narnia, and whether it was more like playing with a kitten or a thunderstorm, Lucy could never make up her mind. And the funny thing was that when all three finally lay together, panting in the sun, the girls no longer felt in the least tired or hungry or thirsty. "And now," said Aslan presently, "to business. I feel I am going to roar. You had better put your fingers in your ears. And they did. And Aslan stood up, and when he opened his mouth to roar, his face became so terrible that they did not dare to look at it, and they saw all the trees in front of him bend before the blast of his roaring, as grass bends in a meadow before the wind. Then he said, "We have a long journey to go. You must ride on me." And he crouched down, and the children climbed onto his warm golden back, and Susan sat first, holding on tightly to his mane, and Lucy sat behind, holding on tightly to Susan. And with a great heave he rose underneath them, and then shot off, faster than any horse could go, downhill and into the thick of the forest. That's all for now. Happy Easter, and thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for some more C.S. Lewis content coming very soon.